What if I told you the secret to living like a high-value woman over 60 starts not with buying something new, but with throwing something out? I'm not talking about random spring cleaning. I mean letting go of the silent clutter that's been holding you back for years, maybe even decades. In this video, we're diving into the 7 things elegant, empowered women over 60 toss without hesitation to level up their homes, their mindset, and their peace of mind. If you've ever looked around your space and felt like it was draining your energy instead of uplifting your soul, this video might just change everything. And trust me, when we get to number 6, you'll understand exactly why most people never break free. Ready to find out what's secretly weighing you down? Let's get into it. 1. Outdated identity triggers. Let me ask you something. When you open your closet or walk into that guest room that became storage 5 years ago, do you see the woman you are now or the woman you used to be? High-value women, especially those over 60, don't let old versions of themselves take up prime real estate in their homes. They know growth means letting go, and that means parting ways with things that no longer reflect who they are today. Think about it. That stiff blazer from your career days that hasn't seen the light of day since retirement? That dusty box labeled wedding stuff from a life chapter that closed long ago? The wall art that matched your style in the 90s, but now just makes you cringe a little? Gone. All of it. Not because the memories weren't real, but because holding on to these items becomes a subtle form of self-sabotage. It keeps you anchored to a version of you that might have been impressive back then, but isn't relevant to the amazing woman you've become. Here's the thing. Your space is a mirror, and if it's filled with echoes of someone you no longer are, how can you possibly step fully into who you are now? Let me throw this out there. What are you still keeping in your home that no longer matches your current life? This part might sting a little, but it's also deeply freeing. High-value women say thank you to the past, and then they donate it, or toss it. They make room not just in their home, but in their identity. Because nothing new can grow in a garden full of dead roots. 2. Obligatory guilt clutter. You know exactly what I mean. That hand-painted vase from your second cousin. The crocheted blanket from a church friend you barely speak to anymore. The souvenir mug from a trip you didn't even enjoy that much, but someone gave it to you, so it stays. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Guilt is a terrible reason to keep anything in your home. High-value women over 60 have learned this the hard way. They've stared at the dusty bookshelf and thought, why am I holding on to this? And the only answer was, because I'd feel bad if I didn't. But here's what they've realized. Feeling bad for 5 seconds while donating something is better than feeling drained every single day walking past it. I remember when I finally let go of a giant decorative clock. It was a housewarming gift. It never worked. I never liked it, but I kept it for almost 8 years. 8, just because I didn't want to offend the person who gave it to me, who, by the way, never even asked about it again. Keeping something out of guilt is like paying rent on someone else's feelings, with your peace. So let me ask you this. Is there something in your home that you're only keeping because of how you think someone else would feel? High-value women don't decorate with guilt. They decorate with joy, clarity, and purpose. They believe their home should be a sanctuary, not a museum of emotional debt. And guess what? Once you start letting go of guilt clutter, it gets easier. You start asking better questions. You feel lighter, freer, more you. 3. Low vibe, just in case junk. Let's be honest. How many things are you holding on to just in case? That drawer full of tangled cords? The kitchen gadget you used once back in 2007? The stack of faded bed sheets with no matching pillowcases? We tell ourselves we might need them someday, but someday never comes. High-value women over 60, they don't live in fear-based thinking. They don't keep clutter as insurance policies for imagined futures. They've realized that most of the just-in-case items are really just noise, physical clutter that reflects mental clutter. Here's a personal one. I once kept a broken lamp for 4 years. Why? Because I thought maybe I'd get it repaired. I never did. Every time I looked at it, it whispered, "You're lazy. You waste things. You don't follow through." I wasn't keeping a lamp. I was keeping shame in the shape of home decor. What about you? Do you have something broken that's been waiting for attention longer than you'd admit? Something you've convinced yourself you might need for a weird scenario that probably won't happen? Ask yourself this. If you saw this item in a store today, would you buy it again? If not, why are you giving it space in your home? And here's the kicker. High-value women trust themselves. They know if life throws a curveball, they'll figure it out without the junk. That trust creates confidence, and confidence is far more valuable than a third backup toaster. Let me warn you, this next one is going to hit a nerve, because it's not about objects, it's about people. 4. Draining relationships in physical form. Let's go deep. This isn't about clutter on your coffee table. This is about the clutter hiding in the closet, both physically and emotionally. Because here's the truth. Some of the heaviest things in our homes aren't the furniture or the boxes in the garage. They're the memories attached to them. High-value women over 60 understand this. They know that peace isn't just about having clean countertops. It's about not being haunted by the past every time you open a drawer. I want you to picture this. A woman in her 60s walks into her guest room, one she rarely uses. She opens a drawer, and there it is, a stack of birthday cards from a man she hasn't spoken to in years. Maybe it was an ex. Maybe it was a friend who vanished when life got tough. Maybe it was a family member who once made her feel loved, and then stopped calling. She picks one up. The handwriting is familiar. The words still sting. And yet, she's kept them. Why? Because we're taught to treasure what people give us, even when those people are no longer good for us, even when the gifts become ghosts. But high-value women make a different choice. They ask, does this still serve me? Not in a selfish way, but in a self-respecting way. I remember a woman once told me she had a drawer full of jewelry from her ex-husband. She hadn't worn any of it since the divorce, but she couldn't bring herself to let go. Every time she saw it, it made her feel small, stuck, a little bit like she failed. One day, she looked at that drawer and realized she was keeping his voice in her life by keeping the things he gave her. So she sold the pieces, used the money to take herself on a weekend trip, and bought a bracelet she loved, with no baggage attached. She told me it felt like a detox for her soul. Here's what most people don't realize. Physical items carry emotional weight. You may not feel it all the time, but it's there in the background pulling at you. The photo album you can't open because it brings back more pain than joy. The sweater from someone who ghosted you that still smells like them. The letter from someone who betrayed you, but you kept because it was the last thing they ever wrote. Let me ask you, why are you keeping those things? Because they remind you of something you lost? Because you're scared you'll forget if you throw them out? Here's the thing. Letting go of the object doesn't mean letting go of the lesson. You're not erasing history. You're choosing healing. High-value women understand that forgiveness and freedom sometimes start with a donation box, or a shredder, or simply the decision to no longer let someone else's shadow darken your space. And it's not just about past lovers or toxic family. Sometimes the clutter comes from friendships that quietly faded, or people who outgrew you, or you outgrew them. You don't need to keep the necklace she gave you when you were close. You don't need to keep the ticket stubs from the trip you took together. You don't need to keep the book she swore you'd love, but every time you see it, you feel a pang of loss. You can honor the memory without honoring the pain. This kind of decluttering isn't about organizing. It's about reclaiming power. Every time you remove an item that no longer serves your heart, you take a piece of your strength back. You're not obligated to be a museum for every emotion you've ever felt. You're allowed to curate your life, to design a space that supports your peace, your growth, your next chapter. And yes, it's okay to grieve what's gone, but it's even more powerful to choose what stays. So, what's one item you know in your gut you've outgrown emotionally, but haven't been ready to release? Hold on to that thought, because in the next section, we're going to talk about something sneaky. Items that look beautiful, even luxurious, but secretly rob you of your time, energy, and joy. 5. Anything that's high maintenance but low value. Let's talk about something sneaky. Not the clutter that's ugly or broken. Those are easy to spot. I'm talking about the things that look impressive on the surface, but secretly exhaust you. High-value women after 60 have learned this. Just because something is beautiful doesn't mean it belongs in your life. Think about all the items that require constant effort but barely bring any joy. The set of crystal glasses you're too afraid to use. The white sofa that stains if you even look at it wrong. The cashmere sweater that can't go in the wash, but somehow always ends up dirty. The espresso machine that needs 30 minutes of cleaning every time you make a cup. Let me ask you, how many things in your home make you work for them? Because here's the truth no one talks about. Stuff should serve you, not the other way around. There's a kind of quiet stress that builds when you're constantly managing your belongings. Wiping, organizing, tiptoeing around things, reminding yourself to schedule the dry cleaning. It eats away at your time, your energy, your mood. I once kept this ridiculously fancy fruit bowl. It was hand-painted, imported from Italy, and absolutely gorgeous. But it chipped if you looked at it wrong, and the paint peeled if the fruit got too wet. It sat there, empty, because I was too nervous to actually use it. It became a symbol of what I thought refined looked like. You know what I replaced it with? A plain ceramic bowl from the farmer's market. It holds bananas. It's easy to clean. It never makes me feel inadequate. And I love it more than I ever loved the expensive one. High-value women aren't seduced by labels. They're not impressed by things that scream status, but whisper stress. They know that luxury isn't in the price tag. It's in peace of mind. They look around their home and ask, does this make my life better? Or just more complicated? Is this adding beauty or demanding attention? Would I buy this again today? Because sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is toss the item that drains you. Let's be honest. How many of us keep things because of how they look to others? The designer handbag that weighs a ton, but goes with everything. The set of formal dining chairs that no one's allowed to sit on. The rug that costs too much to admit. So now you vacuum it like it's made of gold. It's a trap, a quiet one, and it keeps your home from being truly livable. Here's the thing. When you're in your 60s, your time matters more than ever. You don't owe anyone aesthetic perfection. You owe yourself comfort, freedom, and ease. That's what high-value women prioritize. They don't buy things just to impress. They choose what supports the life they want now. And if something feels like it's always one small disaster away from being ruined, it's out. Because the best things in life don't come with warning labels or high-maintenance instructions. Now, ask yourself, what's one item in your home that constantly needs your attention, but doesn't give much in return? What would it feel like to let that go and never think about it again? This part of decluttering isn't about downsizing. It's about upgrading your standards, choosing peace over perfection, simplicity over performance, usefulness over prestige. It's about finally saying, I deserve to rest. I deserve to live in a home that takes care of me. And I no longer have to prove anything to anyone, not with my dishes, not with my wardrobe, not with my furniture. Let that truth settle in. And now, let's move into the next category. This one might sting, because we're heading into territory that looks hopeful on the surface, but often carries the heaviest emotional weight. It's the stuff you keep not because of the past, but because of who you thought you might be by now. 6. Aspirational clutter. Now this is the silent one. The kind of clutter that's trickier to spot, because on the outside it looks motivating. But deep down, it makes you feel like you've somehow fallen behind. High-value women over 60? They've learned to spot this for what it is, a trap dressed up as potential. Let me explain. Aspirational clutter is anything you bought or kept because it represented a version of yourself you wanted to become, but never quite did. And every time you see it, instead of feeling inspired, you feel a little bit guilty, like you let someone down, like you let yourself down. Let me give you a few examples. The brand new yoga mat you swore you'd use 3 times a week, still rolled up. The juicer that promised a new you with green smoothies every morning, used once. The set of French cookbooks you told everyone you'd learn from. But let's be honest, you haven't made anything past page 10. That art set in the back of the closet, untouched since you bought it during a creative phase that lasted all of 3 days. Sound familiar? Here's why this stuff is dangerous. It whispers that who you are now isn't enough. And that's a lie. High-value women let go of aspirational clutter because they understand something deeply wise. They are not failures for not becoming every version of themselves they once imagined. Let that sink in for a moment. You're allowed to change direction. You're allowed to outgrow old dreams. You're allowed to want different things than you did 10 years ago, or even last month. I once had a Pilates machine in the corner of my room for 3 years. 3 years! I bought it during a phase where I thought I'd turn into one of those super-toned, always-in-leggings types. I imagined early morning stretches, smoothies after workouts, that whole aesthetic. You know what happened? Every time I looked at that machine, I didn't feel motivated. I felt ashamed. Ashamed I hadn't used it. Ashamed it collected dust. Ashamed I'd spent good money on something that ended up being a giant metal coat rack. One day I realized, what if letting go of that machine didn't mean giving up on health, but giving up on forcing myself into someone I clearly wasn't? I sold it. And you know what I did instead? Started walking in the park. Nothing fancy. Just simple, real, me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was chasing an image. I was just being myself. That's the lesson here. Aspirational clutter creates shame loops. It keeps you trapped between who you were, who you thought you'd be, and who you're trying so hard to become, without joy. And here's the question high-value women ask. Do I love this item? Or do I love the idea of what this item says about me? Because those are 2 very different things. You don't have to become a gourmet chef just because you have the knives. You don't have to become an author just because you bought the journal. You don't have to become a marathon runner just because you bought the shoes. You're not your potential. You are your peace. Now take a deep breath, because in the final category, we're facing the most common and the most dangerous type of clutter, the kind that doesn't hurt, doesn't shame, and doesn't scream. It waits, quietly, in closets, cabinets, and corners. And it always starts with one word: someday. 7. Anything that screams. Someday. Let's be honest. We all have that one drawer, closet, or dusty corner full of someday items. Someday clothes, someday projects, someday dreams. But here's the thing. Someday is the biggest thief of space, peace, and clarity in your home. High-value women after 60, they've stopped waiting. They've made peace with the truth that someday rarely comes the way we imagine. And they've learned that keeping things for a future that may never arrive only clutters the present that's already here. Think about it. The dress you've been saving in case you lose 10 pounds. The fancy dinnerware packed in boxes because you're waiting for the right occasion. The unopened box of craft supplies you thought you'd dive into after retirement, but never did. The expensive skincare set you were saving for a special day. Now it's expired. These aren't just objects. They're silent reminders of goals unmet, chances not taken, and pressure to become someone else. I get it. We keep these things with good intentions, but over time, they become little weighty whispers. You're not there yet. You still haven't used this. You said you would. That's not motivation. That's emotional debt. I once had a velvet journal I bought during a very inspired moment. I was sure I'd start writing poetry again. But every time I saw that journal, I felt guilt, not creativity. It just sat there, brand new, watching me not live up to a version of myself I imagined in a bookstore one random Tuesday. You know what I did? I gave it to a friend's teenage daughter who loves to write. She filled it in a week. And I felt free. Because sometimes letting go of a someday item isn't giving up. It's letting go of pressure and choosing presence. High-value women ask themselves, am I keeping this because I actually want it, or because I feel like I should want it? That's the real question. And if the answer is guilt, fantasy, or fear, it's time to let it go. Let me ask you, what are you waiting for? The perfect moment? The ideal body? The magical mood to finally start that thing? What if that moment never arrives? What if the best day to enjoy what you have is today? High-value women don't wait to be thinner, younger, or more put together to enjoy their space. They burn the good candle on a Tuesday night. They wear the silk robe for morning coffee. They open the champagne just because they feel like it. They've realized, you don't need permission to live well. You just need to stop delaying joy. So what's one someday item in your home that's ready to go today? You'll be surprised how light you feel without it. And in just a moment, we'll pull everything together. Because what you've been decluttering isn't just stuff. It's a mindset. And the shift that happens next, that's where the real magic begins. Let's pause for a second. Because if you've made it this far, you already know. This wasn't just about decluttering your home. It was about reclaiming your energy, your peace, your now. You're not here to hold on to things that weigh you down. You're here to live fully, freely, and with intention. That's what high-value women do. They let go, not to have less, but to live more. And if something in this video made you reflect, made you breathe a little deeper, made you say, yes, that's exactly how I feel, then don't walk away from this journey. Subscribe to the channel, because this isn't a one-time conversation, it's a lifestyle. And we've got so much more ahead to help you simplify, elevate, and thrive. So hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Your next level is just one choice away.